Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore the intersection of mindful practices and professional growth. I'm your host, Sana, and today we have a very powerful episode lined up for you with conversation about ethical leadership, value based revenue generation, and how to scale your business without burning out. Joining us today is Cat Valverde, affectionately known as your cash flow accomplice. Cat has helped generate over $5 million in direct revenue for her clients and is a top 1% global guest on Podmatch. With a focus on transparency, trust, and mindful leadership in the digital market space, Cat brings a wealth of knowledge and a heart centered approach to business. So, today we are diving deep into scaling your business without sacrificing your well being and integrity. So, let's get started. Kat, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure having you with us today.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Kat, you have a strong focus on ethical business practices and transparency in marketing. What inspired this approach? And how does it influence the way you help your clients generate revenue?
Yes, I started my career in corporate, like most of us do. I was in financial tech, and over about 10 years, slowly moved my way up into leadership. And one of the things I noticed, apart from being burnt out, which is pretty standard, I noticed that further I moved up, the larger my teams got. I had assumed that I would have a bit more autonomy to run my teams the way I'd like, to have the conversations that I wanted to have, and to really mentor the way that I wanted to. And I began to feel even more trapped, and that was just not the case. I didn't have the autonomy I thought I would. And unfortunately, ultimately that did cause me to go out on my own. And that really stayed with me now that I'm running my own firm. Not just about how I can be a good mentor and provide strong leadership in my business, but how do I ensure that as I'm building services and picking who I'm partnering with and who I'm working with, that is also aligned with my values.
Mm, lovely. That's lovely,
Mm.
Kat. So, as you mentioned the word burnout, of course, for professionals in corporates or corporate environment, it is a trending one. But also for entrepreneurs and business leaders, it's a huge issue. How do you help your clients scale their businesses without falling into the burnout trap, or maybe optimizing or minimizing the effects of that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I would say the first thing is it's all about planning. So, for myself, both personally and professionally, I set goals for the year. And for me, I set my goals in the fall of every year for the next 4 quarters, but it certainly doesn't matter when you do this. Most people do it in January. And then I break them up into quarters, so 13 weeks each, as check in points for myself. And when it comes to growth, this applies really beautifully because you can set your revenue goals, your expansion goals for number of clients, or, whatever this is. And then you can break them up into small bite-sized pieces each quarter so that you are, one, holding yourself accountable to kind of checking in on where you are. Some quarters are better than others. And two, so we don't get
Yeah.
overwhelmed, right? It's so easy to set these goals that you want to stretch yourself and you want to, continue striving for something, but you also can, set yourself up for failure if you're, not breaking this out into digestible pieces.
Hmm, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in a world where most of the businesses they rely heavily on ads, you have found success in the post ads economy. So, can you explain what that means and how businesses can generate revenue without relying on traditional ad models?
Definitely, yes, and this plays well in talking about our values and also knowing what we're bringing to the table. So, the post ads economy is referring to moving away from the traditional buying ads for your business or for your products on whichever platform you prefer. Moving away from that and finding more traditional ways to reach out to your audience.
Mhm.
And the whole reason that we're put in this predicament is because, it's no surprise we have Chat GPT, a lot of different AI programs are
Mhm.
coming out. And
Mhm.
even more so, what's coming is something called Search GPT, which is by Google. And
Mm.
what we're seeing is they are getting ready to launch this. And as a result, they're charging significantly more. Sometimes it doubles month over month for how much it costs to run your ads. Um, it's really unfortunate because, we've spent a ton of time, really honing in on who our audience is for these ads, what the messages are, where we're placing them. And now we're seeing huge decreases.
Mhm.
So now you have to spend, let's say $2,000 to get the results that you were getting for years on $1,000. So what we're doing is, coming back to what used to work before we had ads to begin with, and that's email marketing.
Mhm.
Um, but what's really beautiful about this is one, it's not so expensive like it is with ad spend, but two, you're able to kind of go back to our foundations of connecting in a really authentic way with your audience and
Mhm.
communicating in a way that one gets them to open their emails because we hate emails, right? Junk and
Yes.
spam folders are full.
Yes.
But it's almost a forcing function to get all of us to pause for a moment and say, okay, what is the value I'm bringing? Rather than having to sell and persuade and really be pushy because consumers are sick of that. I now need to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what is that value? And how do I communicate that to these people in a way that is transparent and builds trust and inherently, finding authentic and value based ways to do that, offering really valuable freebies to get them in the door. Um,
Mhm.
you know, in the end, it helps us all become more aligned with, a really value based authentic culture.
Hmm, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, some believe that constant hustle and sacrifice are inherent parts of entrepreneurship, making burnout unavoidable. So, do you think mindfulness, self care, and also entrepreneurship they are uh, incompatible when it comes to scaling a business quickly?
Mm. It feels like it some days. but but in reality, I mean, this is going to be the key for all of us, whether we like it or not. We certainly can keep running that burnout train. But if we're talking sustainable scalability, where, you aren't feeling like your hair's on fire 24/7. The only way to do that is to treat yourself like, the first product of your business. Like if you aren't 10 out of 10, then you cannot fill other people's cups and you are not going to be able to grow your business in the way that it needs to be grown. And, even more importantly, as we're talking about scaling and bringing others on, which, is a really exciting and important part, those cultures that you're building at that time, if you are burnt out and you are exhausted, will just continue to, continue that cycle. So, I mean, really, it feels a lot of days like, oh my gosh, how am I still feeling so burnt out? Like, what do I need to do? What is the problem here? But what I have to remind myself is, well, the problem might be me. I might be being a very toxic boss to myself. And the only way to survive and to keep on another day in a way that I can be proud of is to make sure that I'm being mindful of what I'm putting out there and also how I'm doing it. If I'm burning myself out and setting that example for those around me, it's not going to last very long. Like it's going to burnout is called that for a reason, right? Like your light will burn out and that business will not succeed.
That is true. That is true. So, ethical leadership is a cornerstone of a mindful entrepreneur. So, how do you coach leaders to stay grounded in their values while navigating the pressures of scaling a business in a competitive and sometimes ethically gray industries?
Definitely. Yes, I would say, the first thing that is very basic is to pause and ask yourself. So I'll pause for a moment and just explain. I work a lot with partnerships. So I'm either partnering with other companies or I'm helping kind of connect the dots so that to create partnerships amongst my clients. And when we do this, that's when you have to pause yourself and say, okay, I'm really, really excited about this partnership. The revenue is potential is there, but can I handle overnight 50 or more new clients? Like if that's the goal, I mean, we could say 10, 20, but 50 is a good example because it's significant enough that if your systems are not there, then your business will suffer, right? Um,
Mm.
and for me, I'm very, very data minded, so it helps me to put it in a numbers example where I have to think, okay, if I'm not ready for that, if 50 new clients came knocking on my door tomorrow, and I wouldn't be able to give them all 100% service experience that I would be proud of, then I'm not in a place that I'm sustainably doing this. And it kind of goes back to the goals I was explaining. Like you have to check in with yourself and say, okay, um, I should be setting myself up to have these like stretch goals to make sure that I'm growing. But before I take on these new partnerships or a new project or I'm signing a new client, I have to pause and say, okay, if this exploded tomorrow, which in theory is a good thing, could I handle it? And if not, what do I need to do to get there? Like, what is it that I can do right now that will start building those systems in a sustainable way?
Yeah. So, your email marketing strategies have a reputation for being effective and transparent. What mindful principles do you apply to digital communication? And how do you ensure that your email strategies foster genuine connections rather than just being transactional outcomes?
Yes. The biggest thing I would say is, I think about what we're putting out there, what we're sending to people. And number one, I ask, is this adding value? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, here's something that's free and I'm giving you something free as a gift, so I'm adding value. It can be something like the message that you're sending, saying things like, oh, I'm just checking in to see how you're all doing, X, Y, and Z has been tough lately for all of us. Like making a personal connection collectively because we're all kind of going through it right now. 2024 has been rough, and I think adding this human component of I'm sending these messages out, not always to sell you on something and not always just to give you a lead magnet of something free, to then ask you to buy something else. I'm actually sending you a joke or a funny article or a useful article that I came across. Maybe I didn't even write it, but things that I think demonstrate that I'm thinking about my clients and I'm thinking about their needs and thinking about where they are in the world. Um, and then, what's interesting, I think, because we are all in the same boat, is providing things like grounding practices. Like, hey, I know it's been a really stressful quarter, or I know that your teams have been, really stressed lately. Here are some grounding practices you can send them, or here are some there was a really fun, like a desk chair yoga practices that we shared with some of our
Mhm.
clients who gave their teams that helped them
Mhm.
do different stretches throughout the day, especially on very long days. They would pause and do these, in office desk chair yoga practices or stretches for carpal tunnel, like things that we
No.
remind our clients about them so they can remind themselves and remind their teams. And that just builds more trust. And, it's a good reminder.
Yes, that sounds interesting. And scaling a business, it often involves more than just revenue growth. It's about building a mindful culture within teams as well. So, how do you guide entrepreneurs in fostering mindful leadership and creating environments where team members also feel valued as partners or direct contributors in the business's success?
Yes, I would say, one thing that is extremely important is paying them a fair wage and providing some ownership over the
Mhm.
projects that you're doing, whether that be, sharing revenue, which is kind of a twist on commission, but, saying, okay, here's the goal for the company. And let's say that we meet that goal financially. Everything above that, we're all splitting. And we'll provide transparency into what those numbers are so that we all have kind of a piece of the pie. And it not only is it great because you're paying them very well, but it also builds trust and builds some ownership so that they want to participate even more. They're even more engaged. And then they also feel like they have a seat at the table so that they are free to provide insights or to ask questions about something. It basically just gives your team, permission to have some ownership. And
Mhm.
it's really, honestly, it's not unselfish because the more people you have at the table, the more eyes you have on a problem. And I can't tell you how many times, colleagues of mine or people on my team have asked something or pointed something out that I missed, right? Like we can't do it all alone. And so it's just another way to expand that table, make it a little longer with some more seats. And that's been a big one for me.
Mm, lovely, lovely. And there's an argument that being overly mindful or ethical can hinder aggressive revenue generation, which is sometimes necessary for survival in competitive markets. So, what do you say to entrepreneurs who feel that mindful entrepreneurship may limit their growth potential?
Yes, I would say I disagree. I would say, in a just a practical sense, I 100% understand that when it comes between, feeding your family and, living your values, if there's a line in the sand, which side do you take? And I totally understand that. What I would argue though is let's get ahead of that so that we don't have to, cross that line ever. And the way to do that is to be building sustainably and building foundations so that you aren't running before you're ready. Because that's, in my experience, what really puts us in predicaments of, um, having to make rash decisions or having to like really juice that lemon more than, it juice it for more than it has is because further up the line, we've made mistakes. And so really the onus is on us to make sure that from day one, or if, we're on day 50 now, we're revisiting day one to say, okay, am I building this business on something that I genuinely believe is valuable? I'm not a snake oil salesman because to the side, I would argue even that you're living on borrowed time because consumers are smart and savvy, and that won't last very long. But going back to your foundations and making sure that one, you are building cultures where your own people are trusting you. It's the only way to scale and to ensure that long term your clients also trust you, and just consider them an extension of yourself, essentially. And then two, that you're building systems like your email marketing, like we've talked about, but also your platforms that you're using, your CRM, your case management, whatever that may be, your phone systems, that all of these are ready to scale so that you aren't putting yourself in a predicament down the line to be having to ask yourself, oh my gosh, is this ethical? Maybe I'll do it anyway. Like we are our own enemies in that sense, and it really doesn't
Yeah,
work out well long term.
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So, with so many, so much dynamics changing uh, in the recent years, especially this year, an uncertain economic landscape. From a mindful perspective, Kat, how do you encourage the entrepreneurs to stay grounded and resilient while pursuing opportunities? And then what steps can they take to build financial sustainability without falling into fear-driven or, anxiety-driven decision making?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So for me personally, I mean, being an entrepreneur is terrifying, right? We have high
Yeah.
moments of high stress, and I don't know that it ever goes away. The more people I invite into my circle to do this thing with me, then the more responsibility for them I feel. And then I feel, my failures even more deeply because, I don't want to fail other people. It's just this funny, addicting, and wonderful and awful thing that we put ourselves through. Um, so I would say hold space for all of those emotions. Um, but rather than focusing so hard when things don't work out or when you're struggling, remind yourself, okay, this is a bummer. Like this is a healthy emotion. I'm sad, I'm frustrated, whatever it is, name that emotion and feel it. Set a set a timer for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever you need to really feel it. And when that timer ends, tell yourself, okay, this is just a season. This is not forever. Nothing is. I will get through this season starting right now. And that's been a really helpful grounding practice for me. I'm really, really good personally at just pushing my emotions down and kind of pushing onward. And while that sometimes has a place in leadership, it certainly always catches up to you. And so I would say you've got to give yourself permission to feel it and to be scared. I am fearful all the time, especially when there's things that I have not done before or it's a new problem that's arose. But I allow myself to be fearful and to do it anyway. Like to trust myself, to trust my teams, and to say, we're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world, and it's just a season. Another quarter comes, and we reset and we move on. And honestly, I have found that even from a practical standpoint, like really pushing forward after you felt those emotions and trying something new is the best way to save yourself a lot of time and money. Like the more you dwell on something or the more you try to force something to work, the more time you're wasting and the more money you're wasting at the end of the day. So it has a mental and a financial and practical mindfulness to it.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Mm.
So, Kat, if our listeners want to connect with you and learn more about ethical business, about marketing, and how you are cultivating mindful entrepreneurship, how they can do that.
Yes, they can go to emailrevamp.com. And there's two things on that page. The first is a very detailed webinar. It's about half an hour. It's not a sales pitch. It's just all about some detailed practices you can take right now to generate some revenue based on your email lists. And the other spot on that site is a link to schedule a call with me. And, I'm happy to speak with anybody if you're interested in talking more, whether that be about mindfulness practices or leadership, or if you have questions about anything else, then you can reach me there.
Lovely. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Kat, thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights and knowledge on ethical business practices, scaling without burnout, and also how to thrive in today's evolving marketing landscape. And your approach to mindful and value-based leadership, it's a breath of fresh air in the digital business world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And for our listeners, don't forget to check out Kat's work at Profesh and explore the cash flow strategies she offers. And also, you can connect with her using the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And Kat's wisdom can help you create meaningful value for your clients as well as for your teams while staying true to your values. So until next time, stay mindful and keep growing. This is Sana, and you have been listening to the Mindful Living Podcast.